Hello, good people, and welcome back to Unit 2. We only have 2 more videos until we are done with this. 2 more lessons, okay? So, for this next video, after we talked about the amendments, now we've got to drop down to the state level and talk about the North Carolina Constitution. I've referenced it a couple times in the compromises videos and in the preamble and articles videos, and now we're going to get into it, okay? Here's the deal. The North Carolina Constitution is older than the U.S. Constitution, okay? Here's why. Because if you think about it, we are one of the 13 original colonies here in North Carolina, and because we are one of the 13 original colonies, we turned into states before a lot of other states did. So before we had a United States Constitution, we had the Articles of Confederation, or the AOC. And the 13 original states, the 13 first states, they all had individual state constitutions before we put together a U.S. one, okay? So the NC Constitution is a little older. Fun facts. All right, let's get into it. This might seem a little like, oh, we already did this. However, let's talk about the NC Constitution real quick. It has 3 parts. They are the exact same format as the U.S. Constitution. Okay, pretty much every state's constitution looks like this. It has a preamble, which is its introduction paragraph. It has articles. Let's put beside this one, though, that the NC Constitution has 14 articles. So let's put in parentheses beside articles, let's put 14. And North Carolina amendments, it has more than one. I think there are 5 total. Yes. Okay, let's put amendments. Let's put 5 over here. We're not going to focus on those amendments because we have 27 federal ones to remember. So that is that. All right, let's keep her moving. So let's look at this NC preamble. Now, some of these parts are going to be a little bit different than the U.S. one, and some of these parts are going to be the same. So let's go ahead and keep a lookout for what's similar and what's different, all right? We, the people of the state of North Carolina, grateful to Almighty God, the sovereign ruler of nations, for the preservation of the American Union and the existence of our civil, political, and religious liberties, and acknowledge our dependence upon Him for the continuance of those blessings to us and our posterity, due for the more certain security thereof, and for the better government of this state, ordain and establish this Constitution. Whew! Again, run-on sentences. The Founding Fathers, y'all, they love them some run-on sentences, okay? So let's go ahead and figure this out. So let's go ahead and circle we the people. In the first 3 words, what have we created? If you said a democracy, give yourself a high five. That's correct, okay? We the people have created a democracy in the state of North Carolina. Here's where the differences start to kick in, though. Grateful to Almighty God, the sovereign ruler of nations. Whew, all right? There is absolutely no mention of religion whatsoever in the U.S. Constitution, and that is because this particular amendment gives us the freedom of religion. Which one is it? If you said the First Amendment, you'd be correct. Great job. Okay, so I'm grateful to Almighty God is different. Let's go ahead and underline this and put religion. Okay, sovereign means to rule. Okay, because the word reign is in it. For the preservation of the American Union, let's go ahead and circle union. All right, so this is states. All right, remember how we talked about in order to form a more perfect union in the U.S. preamble? If you want to flip back to the U.S. Constitution notes on the articles real quick on the U.S. preamble, you can be like, oh, that is the same. All right, so a lot of the United States preamble comes from different states' preambles and their individual constitutions. All right, and acknowledge, in the existence of our civil, political, and religious liberties. And acknowledge our dependence upon Him for the continuance of those blessings to us and our posterity. Let's go ahead and underline Him, and let's put religion times 2, because this is the second time that we have talked about God in one sentence, and not everybody believes in that particular deity, and that's fine. All right, let's go ahead and underline to us and our posterity. That is the same thing that is in the U.S. one. Okay, so us and the future. Let's go ahead and write out to the side over here, us and our future. Due for the more certain security thereof, and for the better government of this state. Let's underline better government, and let's put keep people well. Okay, keep people well. Do ordain and establish this Constitution. Let's go ahead and circle ordain and establish as well, and let's go ahead and put P and A for power and authority. All right, so when we talk about the North Carolina Constitution, I'm going to put a link out here to the side and let y'all click on this little link and do some browsing around here on the North Carolina Constitution yourselves. You have these 5 questions to address. Okay, please make sure you do so. All right, I'm going to give you a little bit of time to do that so that you guys can get a little more familiar with the Constitution and go through that. Here's the deal, though. At the bottom, I want you to compare and contrast the U.S. and NC Constitution. I want you to focus mostly on the preambles, okay, because there's a whole question on your test that asks you to tell me some similarities and some differences between the U.S. and the NC preamble, okay? I'm not going to ask you to memorize them. I will give you excerpts of both the U.S. and NC preamble. You just got to remember what's the same and what's different. All right, let's go ahead and hop over here to principles in the Constitution. All right, so this should be on the back of your NC Constitution notes. This one, the first principle, this is not principle as in like whoever runs a school. This is principle as in an idea, okay? So a lot of these should be kind of familiar that we've spoken about on principles of government. Here's some things that we specifically put in the Constitution. One of them is popular sovereignty. So we talked about the word sovereign just a second ago. It was plopped down into the North Carolina preamble. The NC Constitution preamble, excuse me. But popular sovereignty means that the people rule. Popular, if you're popular, that means a lot of people know you, okay? It just has to do with people. And then sovereignty has the word reign in it or authority, okay? So the people have the right to rule themselves. That's popular sovereignty. The Founding Fathers were real serious about this. They want the people to be able to rule themselves. That's why we kicked out the king, because we couldn't rule ourselves while he was there, all right? Now we go to limited government, all right? It should have limits on its power. That's how we feel about government. Now, other governments across the world do not feel the same way, but we here in the United States, based on our colonial past, that's how we feel, all right? This prevents the majority from limiting the minority. So if you have minority views or you are in the minority politically, religiously, ethnically, socioeconomically, whatever, if you are someone who is not with the majority, your rights should not be smaller because you do not feel the same way as the majority, okay? Your rights should be equal. It's not pie. There's enough pieces to go around, okay? All right. This is clearly stated in Article 1, okay? That sets up which branch? If you said legislative, you'd be correct. All right, and it includes the rule of law, which means everybody has to follow the law. No one is above it, not even the President of the United States, okay? All right, the next one is federalism. So this one is when federal and state governments share power. If you don't put a star beside federalism, I will beat you over the head with a pool noodle, okay? Put a star beside this. This is important. I'm going to be referencing the word federalism from now until the end of this course. So please make sure you are nice and comfortable with the word federalism and what it means. Okay? So now laws might vary from state to state, but if these laws say something different than the federal government, the Constitution is supreme and the federal government will always win. Okay? The supremacy clause says the federal government is supreme. Because remember in our articles, let's eat Jolly Ranchers and sip root beer. The S for sip is supremacy. All right, speaking of federalism, this is kind of how this works between the federal and the state governments. So we call all powers that are given directly to the state governments one thing, and we call all powers that are given to the federal government something else, and another name if they're shared between the two levels, okay? We're going to go left to right here. So express powers are given directly to the federal government, reserved are given to the state, and concurrent are shared, all right? So here's how we remember this. The Federal Express, FedEx. Boom. If you're like, I don't know what that means. Well, it means the Federal Express. That's what FedEx stands for. So let's go ahead and over here on the side, let's put FedEx for Federal Express. Federal Express. In the middle here for reserve powers, those are given directly to the states. The federal government does not interfere with them. The states are in charge of their own thing for that. And this comes from, which amendment do you think this one comes from? If you said the 10th Amendment, you'd be correct. Give yourself a high five. And if not, cut yourself some slack. All right. So for this one, let's go ahead and put 10th, 10th, 10th right here for state. They come directly from the 10th Amendment. Okay. And then concurrent powers are shared. So both the federal and the state governments get to do this. Let's go ahead and put both in all caps out here. Both. All right, now, here are some examples. So for express powers, having an army is something that only the federal government should be able to do. Because if we think about this, we tried this whole every state for themselves in the AOC, and nobody knew whose job it was to stop this man, Daniel Shays, from blowing up a building when all they had was state militias. So maintaining an army makes more sense for the federal government to do, because let's think about this. If all 50 of our states trained their soldiers in 50 different ways, what is going to happen when you go into battle and you don't go into battle the same way? People are going to die unnecessarily. So we need to have one army, okay? It's also the federal government's job to declare war. California cannot go to war with France. That is not how it goes. Like, sit down, California, you're drunk. All right, that is not how that works. One state cannot declare war on another one. All 50 states have got to be united in declaring war on someone else, okay? Because you cannot put a state army into practice because it doesn't exist. There isn't one. All right, so if you're going to use the federal army, you're going to have to go to war as a federal government and not as a state government. Okay, a postal system is also a federal power, so having the United States Postal Service, or the USPS, otherwise lovingly referred to as the post office, this is a federal power. Because could you imagine if we had 50 different ways to send mail? Lord help, you would never be able to get something from Amazon. It'd be the worst thing ever, okay? All right, immigration is a federal power, so there is one way to immigrate into the United States. There are not 50 different ways from each state. There is just one way to become a U.S. citizen, okay? This is mostly because your citizenship extends to all 50 states instead of just one. All right, and then coining money. To coin means to create it, okay? To print it or to stamp it. All right, so either you print your paper money or you stamp out your coins. So this is a federal thing, because remember, in the AOC, every state had their own kind of money, but you can't spend money from different states because it's different values. So we needed just one solid monetary system. If you have a $100 bill in Tennessee and you have a $100 bill in Nebraska, they are the exact same thing because they are from the exact same place. Okay, so having a federal, one federal system for coining money was good for us. All right, now let's go down to the state level. The things that the state can fool with, trade within their state. So for example, buying alcohol. All right, in New York, you can buy liquor, beer, wine, all of it in the same store. But here in North Carolina, liquor is in a separate place in the ABC store because it is taxed at a separate rate. Okay, so trade within the state is different, or like how sales tax works. In Florida, their sales tax on all of their stuff is higher than ours. So if I were to go get like an Arizona tea from the gas station in North Carolina, I'd only have to pay 7 cents in tax. But if I were in Florida, I'd have to pay 9. Okay, so they are in charge of trade within their states. They set up all schools, so that's why all schools in each state are set up in a different way. So for example, this class, civics, is taught to 12th graders in South Carolina. So if anybody moves from South Carolina to North Carolina before they're a senior, they're going to have to take their civics class kind of out of order. All right, rules for marriage are also set up in the state. For example, you have to go to the courthouse and get a license if you'd like to get married, not in front of a judge. However, if you were in Vegas, you can literally get married in a drive-thru like you're going through cookout, okay? Licenses are also a state power. So like driving your license, you can't get it until you're 18 in California. You can get it at 16 in North Carolina. All right, and then shared powers. You pay 2 sets of taxes at minimum. They can both borrow money. They can both set up courts. So if somebody murders someone else that is breaking both a federal and state law, you could go to both federal or state, well, either federal or state prison, all right, after going through the federal or state court system. All right, and let's do the last couple ones. So then the last one should be separation of powers, and it's split into 3 branches: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. And you got to tell me whose idea it is and why they feel this way in the question coming up. If you said Montesquieu, so that all of them have equal power, you'd be correct. All right, and this has been Principles of Government.